Before the Avengers, Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, Marvel Comics was called Atlas. And Fantagraphics has been doing a great job with their new Atlas Comics library. So today, we're going to cover the 4th volume of this set that they've been doing. It's called War Comics. And that's not all. I will also be comparing it to this older collection called Atlas at War. There's been a lot of questions on if there's any double dipping between these two volumes, these two books. So I'll go over that and talk about the restoration and all those things. So stay tuned and watch this video until the end. Thank you for joining me. My name is Taylor. This is Taylor Talks Comics. Before we get started, I do want to dedicate this video to Ryan McArdle, who unfortunately passed away recently. He was the designer on this collection of Atlas Comics Library for Fantagraphics. He designed the whole line, and then also he's designed a couple of future volumes that will be coming out that have not been released yet. He was a designer on the Joe Manili collection, and then has designed the upcoming Al Williamson collection. But Ryan McArdle, I didn't know him personally, so I can't speak to him on a personal relationship or anything. But there has been great tributes from his fellow co-workers over at Fantagraphics, talking about how great he was as a human being and a fellow co-worker, and his love of comics and that sort of thing. But I do want to dedicate it to him because I do often talk about book design on my channel and how important it is in these collections, especially when they're being they're archival collections too, and just presenting them in a new way for a newer audience. And I think Ryan McArdle did a tremendous job with the Atlas Comics Library. So just want to dedicate this to him and say that his work and his design, eye for design and things on these collections will definitely be missed. And again, you can go to Fantagraphics social media, and I think on their website too, to see some personal recollections of people that were closer to him, talking about him and talk about some of the other books that he's designed too, because he did some design work on some of the EC Artist Library and a couple of other books. So today we are going over the Atlas Comics Library. This is volume 4, number 4. This is War Comics, volume 1. So it's the 4th of the Atlas Comics Library reprints, but it's also going to be volume 1 of War Comics. As you can imagine, we'll have more War Comics volumes in the future. And on the spine here, you can see it says Atlas Comics Library number 4, and then War Comics volume 1 as well, right there. And then War Tales on Far-Flung Battlefields. And then you got the great Fantagraphics logo. And on the back here, we have some quick little hits of some of the stories that are included in here, as well as the blurb there, and some more artwork. Let me open this baby up, and we get this awesome blown up Atlas logo as the end papers on the front. And on the back, it's the same thing, but with the Atlas at the top right. And then we open it up. So as I said in my preamble, this Atlas was what Marvel was called prior to being called Marvel. So the easiest way to, put that is that basically everything in the 1950s was from that same publisher. It was called Atlas. In the 60s, they changed the name to Marvel. Prior to Atlas, they were Timely. So there's that. It does have like the Marvel logo there because this is in conjunction with Marvel. But they farmed it out to Fantagraphics, which I love because the restoration that they do on these editions is much better and much more preferred by me than how Marvel usually restores their stuff. I've talked about that a lot on my channel as well. But Alan Harvey is the guy that does the restoration on here, along with Paul Baresh and Ben Horick. Do an amazing job on here. Alan Harvey actually did also work on Atlas at War, which I'll get to in a second. And then you open up here. We have a great table of contents here. Again, the design work on the top is great. So we have the World War Atlas, which is the introduction by Dr. Michael Vassallo, which I'll get into in a little bit. And then we have War Comics Volume 1. And this collects the first 8 issues of War Comics. That's what the title was called at Atlas, which is called literally War Comics. They had a bunch of other titles involved that were war-oriented stories, but this one is called War Comics, and it includes the first 8 issues. Now, as far as the credits go for each story, you can see in here, let me zoom in a little bit, that they did the best job as far as the credits, but you'll see words unknown on some of them, art even especially these earlier ones, words and art unknown. They've done the best work as far as trying to find out who did what on here, and sometimes there'll even be question marks. Like right here, they think Russ Heath did this one, but they aren't sure. So that's one of the important things about the preservation of comic book history that I always talk about, is having a place in time where someone that was there when these were happening, or at least picking them up off the racks as a fan, able to piece those things together as best as they can. Because they didn't really keep good records back then, and also credits weren't really put into the stories as well. All right, so here's the introduction by Dr. Michael Vassallo. Now, Dr. Michael Vassallo, I guess real quickly, we go over Atlas at War. So Atlas at War was a collection by Dead Reckoning that was put out, which I think the Dead Reckoning publisher was the part of the Naval Institute. And this was a best of collection of the Atlas War stories. You can see it has like all these names on here: Russ Heath, Stan Lee, Gene Colan, Ditko, Kirby, Don Heck, Severin, all on here. And this is a great collection. Now people have bought this, and they were wondering what the difference is between these two. A lot, actually. But the cool thing is that Dr. Vassallo edited this, so he put all these stories together, picked them out, and also writes an introduction in this book. However, the introduction that's in the new Fantagraphics one is a whole new introduction. So, reason number one why you need to own both, if you are into this kind of stuff. Reason number two is Alan Harvey did all the restoration on both of these. So you can see the restoration looks great. Alan Harvey does a great job where he tries to bring it back to the original, as close to the original way that these comics looked from the beginning, when they were taken off the racks, and updating them. He doesn't oversaturate the colors or make it look like kind of garish or trying to modernize it for a new audience or anything like that. He wants it to look as true to the original as possible. That's reason number two to own Atlas at War. And then reason number three, the reason why you need to own both of these, there's only 2 stories in this book that are included in this book. So if you look at the table of contents in this one, you'll see that it has them in like chronological order as far as when the stories came out throughout here. Yeah. And you'll see that War Comics number 7, issue number 7, is included in the first 2 stories. But after that, the next War Comics issue is number 9, which is after the Fantagraphics collection, because this only collects issues 1 through 8. So there's only literally 2 stories, not even 2 full issues. There's 2 stories within here that are included in this. So that's one question I get a lot whenever this was coming out, was what's the difference between these? There's a lot. So back to, and I'll do a comparison too of the restoration, because Alan Harvey, I don't know if he did something a little bit different or what. I don't think he used the exact same files, but I'll go over that in a second. So back to the Dr. Vassallo introduction. All new introduction. This is brand new, written for this Fantagraphics collection, which is great. I'm glad that they didn't just repurpose the old one, which I don't know if they could have anyways for rights issues. But Dr. Michael Vassallo is like the go-to international historian on all things Atlas Comics. He's done a lot of introductions and things for different eras of comics besides just Atlas, but Atlas is like the go-to. There's no one I've ever seen or encountered that knows more about Atlas Comics than Dr. Michael Vassallo. He's a dentist in Manhattan, and he just loves Atlas Comics. So, really, really great introduction. I said this about the Adventures in Terror video I did as well. I still need to pick up Day in the Rockets and Venus, and then I'll do overviews of those too. But what I keep saying is that these introductions by Dr. Vassallo are worth the price of admission alone. There's so much great history in here of learning about comics, and it's something I'm very a big fan of, is learning about comic book history. And just like the ephemera they include as well too, like these Alex Schomburg, I think these are Alex Schomburg covers, but these are like the pulp stories that came out, novels before they were comics. I think that's a Schomburg piece. Maybe these are not. I don't know. I digress. And then we have also this, just all the different covers that they were doing to put you in a time and place of the other output that these publishers were putting out at the time. And then I love this image too. This has been included in a lot of collections, especially Jack Kirby ones. But this is a famous photograph or art piece by Joseph Hirsch. So it's done in that picture, then it became a cover for Stag, and then Jack Kirby homaged it for this cover of Guys in the Foxhole. Just amazing, like so harrowing, the image. And then here's some more pieces, complete war novels. And then here's some more, I think these are the Atlas comics. Yeah, these are spy titles. Yeah, because he talks about that in here too. The war genre of comics really came to fruition during the Korean War, so kind of after World War II. And prior to that, or in between that, was the spy genre was a big thing. Here's a famous advertisement piece I've seen in a lot of collections. For the best war titles, always buy magazines having the Atlas seal. So these are all the different war titles that are putting out at once. So, like I said, these are just collecting war 1 through 8, but you can imagine all the other future potential Atlas collections that Fantagraphics can do just in the war genre alone, which is really cool. And now we get to the first issue. So all the covers are intact. They're all included in here. And the ads. These are like true facsimile editions of these stories. And you can see, like I said before, that these are done to look just like the original comics, as if they came off the racks. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer so you can really appreciate the art. Now, these war stories are, they're interesting. I think I have a lot of videos on my channel showing off different war comics and things. And one guy I always talk about is Harvey Kurtzman, who brought the genre of war comics over to the EC comics. Now, this does include, real quickly, before I get back to Kurtzman, this does include these prose stories in here. Now, the reason why that was because back then in the 50s, in order for comics to be able to be distributed through the mail via the, I forget what it was called, like the second class mail discount or something like that. It kind of reminds me of what media mail is considered today. How you cannot, anything with advertisements in them, like single issue comic books sometimes, you can't send through media mail, but you can send like collected editions. Like people that buy and sell collected editions know what I'm talking about. But back then they had these rules that you had to have at least 2 pages of prose in every comic book in order for it to get that discount, which is interesting. But so these are all included in here as well. The chips are down. This is one of my favorite stories in here too. So back to what I was saying about Kurtzman. So Kurtzman had this idea of the war comics and the war genre showing off like the true harrowing aspects of war, the horror, the way that there was really no winners in war. There's no winners or losers, no matter what side you were on. And that's how he depicted it. So the stories were more raw and realistic when Kurtzman was doing them. Now, with Atlas, I was under the impression that when I started reading it, these were going to be like more gung-ho, patriotic, like go America, everyone else is the enemy kind of thing. But I was actually surprised that they aren't exactly like that. They are a little bit. There's certainly some aspects to that. And you'll even see, like, I think the very first story in here, Dr. Vasala points out, is like true like propaganda for the Korean War. Yeah, peril in Korea. It starts off with this guy like even questioning why we're in Korea and whether he should be fighting here. And he finishes off like, when I got back to meet my story, I really do want to be here. I know the score now. And so there are some that definitely feel like the kind of patriotic gung-ho America propaganda kind of stuff. But there's some that are in here that are just truly harrowing and crazy. Like, let me see if I can find the... No, it wasn't that one. It was issue 7, I think. This issue 7? Yeah, issue 7. Which I think is the best issue in here, for sure. Is it this first? Yeah. So this first issue, or first story in this issue, which is included in Atlas at War, this book right here, is done by Russ Heath, who's an amazing artist. He was one of those artists, especially when it came to war comics, that truly try to get the uniforms and the artillery and the vehicles and everything accurate. Like he collected some of these uniforms and things to make sure they're accurate, which was always appreciated by the true soldiers. So this one is called Alone, and it's about this soldier that doesn't understand why doesn't really feel like he understands why he's in this war. He kind of just wants to be home. He doesn't really relate to any of the other soldiers in his infantry and that kind of thing. So he's really feeling isolated. And then in this scene, he finds himself. I'm not going to spoil a lot of the stories, but I just want to spoil this to show how harrowing the story is. Again, Russ Heath, like these images too, just really depict the drama in here. So, but he finds himself alone in this building with all these Korean soldiers all of a sudden staring right at him with guns. And then he just goes nuts. And these panels are absolutely insane. Like, it reminds me of a scene from, like, if you guys watch, like, the John Bernthal Punisher on Netflix, where he just goes nuts when he's in, I think it's in Afghanistan in that scene. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit. And then at the end, he's like, yeah, I feel part of the team now, kind of. So, like, the end has the kind of that more moral end to it, that moral story where you, like, you know, find out what you're supposed to do at the end. But before that, it's just this harrowing stuff. Like, it's absolutely insanity. And the artwork by Russ Heath is just truly, truly horrific. But, like, in the most accurate sort of way. Fighting Machines here. This is a Norman Steinberg story, and this one is really great. This one is about a war correspondent. So he's a journalist trying to cover the war. And throughout here, before like he goes into battle with these guys, he's just kind of sticking around, interviewing the different soldiers and trying to get their different personalities, and realizes that most of these guys are from completely different spots of America. So you have, like, some New Yorkers, some Southerners, like everywhere else. So they don't really get along, and they're always arguing about things. And so then when they go into battle, he says, like, I know exactly how these guys are going to turn out, know exactly how this battle is going to go, based on their personalities. But then when they go into battle, they all work as a team completely as if they're all one just solid moving unit, where you can't even depict who's who within it. And at the end, as he's at his typewriter, he's like, I had a story and I knew all these different personalities, but now I'm sitting at my typewriter and I don't have a story. They're all just fighting like a giant machine. And then that's the story. That's what he changes it to. So that's another great one. Then APO is the other story that's included in Atlas at War. Also a Russ Heath story. And this is another tremendous one as well. And then, where's the... Oh, it was the Stormy Weather was the Joe Manili story. So throughout this whole book, I do have to say that issue 7 is my favorite issue. Issue 7 has... no, where's the contents? It has Russ Heath on Alone, Joe Manili on Stormy Weather. Nobody knows. The text story is unknown. And then Fighting Machines by Norman Steinberg, and APO by Russ Heath. So, really, really great issue there. But I was really kind of surprised by how great these war comics were. I was kind of comparing them to the Kurtzman stuff, and, like, they can't really match up to that, right? But no, they held their own in comparison to the great EC war comics. And I just love all this history too, these ads in here and things. And then the back, I think it's just biographies as far as the back matter goes. Yeah, like that's the back cover. And then you have biographies of each person each creator that was involved within this collection. And then that's it. But I do want to do a comparison for the art restoration, because, like, I have nothing but praise for Alan Harvey's restoration, but I do find it interesting that these were a little bit different. So let's go to Alone and then compare it to... Or is this? Yeah. Okay. So these are two different restorations. This is Atlas at War on the left, and then on the right is the Fantagraphics War Comics collection. Now, right off the bat, you can notice that the paper they used for Atlas at War was a more yellowed paper. For the collection for Fantagraphics is more stark white, and it is a matte paper. They're both matte, which is great. I think that's the way to preserve these, because these were originally printed on newsprint. But using the slightly yellow paper is reminiscent of, like, what they did for the Carl Barks collection, Fantagraphics. Using a slightly yellow paper lets the art sit on it a little bit better, and it doesn't have, like, that stark white that can be garish at times because it stands out amongst the color. But for some reason, I don't have a problem with this. I think it's because it's on matte paper. I think if this was a glossy paper, I might have an issue with that. Now, as far as the restoration, I have no idea if Alan Harvey used the exact same files and restoration he used for these in the story, or if he redid it. The way they go about it, I've seen, is Dr. Michael Vassallo and Alan Harvey, I think both, try to hunt down these actual issues to scan them in and then do the restoration, which is... an enviable task. Can't imagine how hard that would be, especially trying to collect these 1950s issues. So, that could be something that changed too, as far as the way that, they could have got a better copy when they did this Fantagraphics one. or it could be the paper that's on. But it's not like there's not like huge differences between two, but you can see like the yellow over here is much more saturated than over here. And the paper they used on the Atlas at War collection is like thin. Like you can kind of see like through the paper on here. So that could have been affected too, because this is a thicker matte paper. You can't really, I guess you can kind of see through if I hold it directly to the light. But as you're reading it, you can't tell. On here, you can kind of see through it, even with it's laying flat in the book. When this is laying flat, you can't tell. But the colors, like I noticed the yellows definitely are brighter in these. And sometimes the blues and things. So again, I don't know. It could be because the paper they used. It could be a completely different file. I'm not sure. If Alan Harvey or Dr. Fasala is watching this video, please put that in the comments. I'm very much fascinated by that kind of thing. Either way, they're both restored great, and they're great ways to present these comics. And as you can tell, you need to own both of these. When all is said and done, if Fantagraphics does enough of these war comics, then maybe this will become obsolete. But until then, if you can find this for cheap, which I think you probably can. I think it's out of print, but you might be able to find it on eBay and things. But in the meantime, buy this, because this is a beautiful collection, especially for like war comics. I love these Atlas Comics libraries for Fantagraphics. I can't get enough of them. Thank you so much for watching. Please give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. I am on the road to 3,000 subscribers. I'm getting closer and closer. My goal is to get there by the end of the year, and I could use your help. Giving the video a thumbs up and commenting down below, those things help the YouTube algorithm put my videos and my channel in front of the people's eyeballs that don't know my channel exists. And that's all appreciated as well. And share this anywhere you talk about Atlas comics or classic comics, war comics, if you're on Reddit, Facebook, or any other forums or anything like that. I very much appreciate you sharing that. And this comes out this week. I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but it's coming out this week. So make sure you buy it if you're interested. Thank you guys. Keep talking comics.